I think today it has to be said that this is the worst Tottenham team I have seen since I started watching the Premier League. And at the same time, is one of the most talented teams that we've ever had. And it's mind boggling. I don't understand it. We can go back all the way to the Champions League game. And I don't know what the problem is. I think it has to be an attitude problem with the players. That's the only thing I can think of. Look, the Champions League game was so bad. It was an abject performance by most of the players on the pitch. And in a game like that, I think you have to blame it on the players. They're the ones that are playing. I have said this in the past many times. The manager takes some of the blame, but the players are the ones that are out there. They're the ones that are kicking the ball around. You have to blame the players first. However, I think the Olympiacos game highlights the one thing that I think Pochettino gets wrong all the time, and it is learning from his mistakes because I think he's got a bit of arrogance with ideas that he has. They don't work, but he's too stubborn to change. So, for example, going way back to the North London derby against Arsenal, he played Sanchez on the right, right? He was playing right back. It was such a performance, such a terrible performance that was widely criticized by everyone with eyes that work. It didn't work. Sanchez was one of the weak points in that game. And with different options, Pochettino decided to do it again away at Olympiacos. Everyone knows that Olympiacos is a tough away match. Historically, a tough opponent for all English sides. They're not a bad team, but they're not great. Should have been a game we should have won, but for some of the decisions Pochettino made. Now, Sanchez obviously wasn't the only one that struggled in that game, but I think his performance just underscored the poor performance overall for the entire team. Obviously, Sanchez is not a bad defender. I think I won't say very good, but he's a good center back. But he's an awful right back. He is slow. He's uncomfortable with the ball, in possession with the ball in the wide areas, that he is not in the middle of the pitch. He's more comfortable in the middle of the pitch than he is in the wide. He can't make a cross. He can't cross the ball. So the forwards don't get any service. He's just not good at that role. He wasn't good at the role against Arsenal. He wasn't good at that role in Greece. I don't understand why Pochettino wouldn't play someone else. Now, without service, Kane struggled to make an impact in that game, right? Ericsson was sloppy and ineffective. And Ndombele was erratic and seemed out of gas by the time he was subbed out. Ben Davies on the left was invisible. Dele Alli was atrocious. It was one of the worst performances he's had. Uh, the center backs had a decent performance, minus Vertonghen's penalty, which was unfortunate. I would say for that Champions League game, Winks was the only real positive the game had. Moore's goal was really good, but it wasn't enough from the other midfielders to give him space to run. It just seemed clogged. And because Davies isn't a great crosser of the ball and Sanchez is an absolutely awful right back, there was no crossing. It's looking more and more and more that letting Trippier go was a mistake. Whatever it is that happened behind the scenes, where Trippier apparently felt like he wasn't wanted, whether it doesn't matter what's the truth or not the truth, something should have happened to keep him because we don't have so many. Serge Aurier is good at crossing the ball. He's got defensive deficiencies, on the other hand, so that's a problem. Kyle Walker Peters is a good crosser of the ball, but he's still, I think, kind of raw. I don't. If Kyle Walker Peters is on the bench, why aren't you playing Kyle Walker Peters? I don't get it. Pochettino goes on after the what felt like a loss, to be perfectly honest. And he says that the team did not respect the game plan. But in reality, this just highlights my biggest complaint and my biggest criticism of him as a manager is that he is hard headed to the point that he is arrogant. You know, if my game plan, quote unquote, my game plan is to fix my broken television by hitting it with a hammer, and it doesn't work because it's a stupid idea, then I can't then say that the hammer didn't respect my game plan, right? Playing Sanchez at right back and not playing a defensive minded midfielder in front of him was a stupid idea. It's not the game. It's not the player's fault that your idea is bad. It's the fact that he continued the entire game. He played the entire game. The entire game. It shows Pochettino's stubbornness and refusal to change tactics that he played the entire game. It's not the player's fault, Pochettino. It's your fault. You're playing a center back at right back. He's not good at it. And you didn't play anyone in front of him that helps him defensively. And on the other hand, oh my, it's so frustrating to watch. The formation, when they announced the players, the squad, I thought he was going to play three at the back. But instead he played four at the back with a player that didn't do a good job at that role. Anyway, look, Kyle Walker Peters is on the bench. There's this theory out there. People have said this. It's not my idea. This is not my concept. But if you're healthy enough for the bench, you're healthy enough to play. Otherwise, don't be on the bench. Like, why take up a slot of someone that isn't going to play on the bench? Somebody else could be on the bench that could play. So if you're not going to risk Kyle Walker Peters, if you're worried about risking Kyle Walker Peters, and you don't want to play him at right back, then play a three at the back. He could have played three at the back. He could have played Sanchez in the middle. He's done this before. Sanchez in the middle, Vertonghen on the right. On the left, and Alderweireld on the right. That's your back three. All right. Sanchez pushes up a tiny bit when we have possession, and he drops back into that middle spot when we're defensive. You could play Davies as a winger on the left, and you could play Lucas Moura on the right as a winger. And the fact that we already saw what happens, clearly, we saw what happens when Sanchez plays right back. It was just 2 weeks before that game. And you try it again, it shows that Pochettino doesn't learn, or he's just so hard-headed and arrogant that he cannot admit when his own ideas fail. Those are the two possibilities. It didn't work once against a tough opponent, a much tougher opponent, admittedly. But why would you go to a hostile away Champions League game that you need to start off on the right foot and do it again? Why would you play him again? I think Pochettino's a good manager. I think he's a fine manager, a really good one. But he makes these tactical errors at the highest level that have cost the team dearly. For example, the Champions League final. He chose to play Kane when he was hardly 100%, and it cost the team. I think more than just the handball that was the garbage handball. Playing Kane was, instead of starting Lucas Moura, I think was the error that cost Tottenham the game. That's just my opinion. There's no point in going back and beating a dead horse, but it's things like this. So he makes these decisions that just don't work, and instead of fixing them as the game goes on, he doesn't, or he repeats the same mistake in subsequent games, which is exactly what happened here. And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that we would do that. A lot of people were blaming. I looked at. This is what happens when you look at the internet after a game like this. You had, and it just makes me angry. But you look at people like the player ratings, and everyone was giving Jan Vertonghen the worst ratings in the game because they claimed that both the goals were his fault. No, both goals weren't his fault. The penalty kick was his fault, obviously. But you look at the other goal, the first one. Vertonghen is facing the ball. There's a runner that runs past Davies, past Vertonghen. Davies fails to track the runner. The ball gets to him and he scores. That's not Vertonghen's fault. All right. This was on ESPN. They blamed Vertonghen. I think it was another one too that blamed Vertonghen for that goal. You're wrong. Like, you're objectively wrong. That was not Vertonghen's fault. I don't know what my point was with that at all. But so yeah, I don't remember what I was talking about. But I was complaining about Pochettino's lack of flexibility when it comes to this kind of stuff. I think that's problem number one. Problem number two. Now, I didn't watch the Leicester game over the weekend because I was unable to watch the game. Um, I was gonna watch the replay, but I did see the offside. And I'm gonna go on a tangent on the offside in a second, but we're talking about the flaws of the team right now. Yesterday in the EFL Cup, there has to be now an inquisition on the team because this is the same team of last year and it's the same team of the year before that. And granted, some of the players are getting older, but not to the point where they're like 38 years old and can't run anymore. I think Vertonghen is the oldest outfield player. He's 33. He should still be good as a defender, right? He's still a good defender. Positioning doesn't. You don't lose positioning with age. It's not like you forget where you're supposed to be. He's not that old. Like, wow, was I supposed to defend? Oh, no, it's not like that at all. Um, Alderweireld, I think, is 30 or 29, 30, maybe he's 31. Yeah, he's one of those. He's still a really good defender. Um, the and everyone else is in their 20s, mid 20s. Like, I think our other oldest outfield player. Oh, I don't remember how old Ben Davies is. I think Son is 27. Um, but no players right now are past their peak. Everyone is either at their peak or right before their peak right now on this team. It's a very, very, very talented squad. One of the most talented squads that Tottenham has ever had. Definitely the most talented squad that we've ever had since I started watching back in 2007. I think up and down the field, there's more talent on this team than ever before since I started watching the Premier League. And that yet the team sucks. The team is bad. It's a bad team. Like even when we had like Palacios in midfield, the team wasn't this bad. And I think it's an attitude problem. You see this problem with other teams individually. Like you'll see like Paul Pogba be a douchebag and have bad attitude. You see it with Alexis Sanchez. You saw it with when he was at Arsenal. He was getting ready to go. You see it with Chelsea every other year. Like they win a Premier League title, and then the next year, the players just have this attitude issue. You see it happens, right? I think we're going through an attitude issue. It's not as bad as with Chelsea because they're genuinely crappy people. The players, I mean, but it's something interesting I read about Sir Alex Ferguson when he was managing. He won a lot, all the time, and no matter how good the players were, he had this like 5-year policy. It might have been like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, but more or less it was a 5-year policy. You had a team, you had a squad. And every 5 years you would rotate it, clean it out. And the theory behind it, his reasoning behind it is Obviously, he was still the same manager. He had the same philosophy. He had the same training regimen. Um, Obviously, that changed with new tactics that emerged, new technology, new medical advances, and stuff like that. Okay, but he was still the same manager. He expected the same things out of his players. The problem was, after 5 years or so, the players become tone deaf. They tune out the manager's instructions because they've been there for so long. The manager doesn't push them. He pushes them, but they don't allow themselves to be pushed because they've heard it so many times. So what you need is one of two things. You need to get some of the players that either have peaked with the team or are not listening to the manager's instructions anymore and move them out. And either bring in new faces or promote youth, right? You promote the youth because they're hungry and you want them to push the veterans for their starting roles, which makes the veterans play harder because they don't want to be supplanted by a youngster. They want to keep their starting place. Right? The youth have come up through the youth academy, the youth teams, so they know the Tottenham philosophy in this case, or the Manchester United philosophy back in the when Alex Ferguson was in charge. But then so that's a good thing. That's a one column. The second column is you bring in fresh faces from other teams, fresh faces that have different mentality, different thoughts that can push the first team in a different direction, in a good direction, in a positive direction, right? They haven't been around the Tottenham system, the Tottenham philosophy, what Pochettino expects. It's a clean slate, right? So Pochettino can mold these new players into first team players. And obviously, if there's one thing that Pochettino does better than probably most managers in the world, is he's a he's a player manager. He knows how to get the best out of the players. But even that has an expiration date, right? It's got a point where a best use by date, right? It's best used if in within 5 years, and if it's not working, you have to rotate the crop of players. And I think we've reached that point. He's been at Tottenham for 6 years now, and I think you can see it. There's some players that at the beginning were flourishing under him and have stagnated and they need to go. So I'm going to say a couple of those players right now. Obviously, Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld are leaving. I think they're leaving not because of their performances, although the performances have not been up to snuff lately. I would say over the last 2 years, they've gone from objectively being the best center back pair in the league to being not that anymore. I think Dele Alli needs to go. He's number 2 or 3, I guess, because going back to Alderweireld and Vertonghen, they're leaving. Their contract expires this summer, both of them. Neither of them, as of right now, as of this recording that I know of, have extended or signed a new deal, so they're leaving. That is not good. That is not a good thing, right? I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but they're leaving, so that's going to be rotation. That means we need to buy a center back or to promote a youth player. I don't know if that's going to be Tanganga or someone else. Juan Foyth is not good enough. I don't know if Tanganga is. I think Davinson Sanchez is good enough with a little more work, but I don't know if you're going to want to bring in a veteran to anchor that defense. But anyway, he's got to go. They're leaving, so that's that. So that's going to be new. That's going to be fresh blood in the defense. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing that they're leaving because they're really good players, but it's a good thing that there's going to be a reshuffling. Dele Alli has to go. Dele Alli has an attitude problem, and this attitude problem is something that you could have seen coming. It was visible last season, and it was visible the season before that. I think Dele Alli had two really fantastic seasons and since has had two really bad seasons. Some of it has been because of injury, but not all of it. You can't blame it all on the injury. You have to blame it on him. He wasn't a diver when he first got to Tottenham. He's become a diver. He's become a player that he's feisty, he gets into fights, but he doesn't perform. It Pochettino likes the guy likes a player that's fiery, right? He said that in the past. But the other side to that coin is you have to perform. You can't just be a jackass and not be good. All right? No team needs that. No team needs just a jackass. When what's his name? Diego Costa played for Chelsea, he was an enormous douchebag, but he scored a lot of goals. And everyone was like, well, if he's you hate him, but at least he's your douchebag, not someone else's, right? We don't have that with Dele Alli. He's just a little prick that walks around, doesn't bother half the time. He's either super hot or super cold. He's got that bad attitude. He dives. He doesn't perform. He has to go. He's one of those players that peaked and is going downhill fast, and it doesn't seem he didn't exhibit any signs of a resurgence yesterday. He, in fact, didn't show signs of anything. Transfer market, I think right now has him valued at 81 million euros. He's not worth that. He might be worth half that. But if he's valued at that right now, we need to sell him. He needs to leave. He needs to go somewhere else. It doesn't matter where he goes. Because with that amount of money, if we can even get half of that, we can invest that in another young player or an established player that can make an impact on the team. All right, look at you, Paulo Dybala. That would be a fantastic. We get rid of Dele Alli, bring in Dybala. That would be amazing. That would be an amazing upgrade. Hands down, an upgrade. He's one of the players that I think needs to go. Christian Eriksen doesn't need to play anymore. Christian Eriksen, I said this a little while ago, is one of those players that has a bad attitude. And we're going to get into the situation just like Alexis Sanchez when he was at Arsenal, where he doesn't want to be there and he plays badly when he plays, but he's got this reputation of being such a good player that Pochettino is going to continue to play him. And I think yesterday's penalty kick, it was so half-hearted and just you can tell his mind is not on the team. All right, maybe I'm being hard on him by saying that he needs to leave forever because he's crap. He's crap now. He's not good. All right, he's not good anymore. And maybe it's just a personal thing that he needs to get over, and maybe he'll still be good for the rest of the season. Maybe he'll come to a realization or something will happen, an epiphany, and he'll just come back to be a good player. But the other problem I have with relying on him too much is that he's leaving. And it's very, very possible that he's leaving in January. So are we going to rely on him until January and then just like cut off our legs? Let's pretend the scenario is this. Starting this weekend, or whoever we play this weekend, Eriksen is like, you know what? I am being a piece of crap. I need to play better. And he starts playing better. And he becomes the Eriksen of 2 years ago where he's lighting it up. And then he leaves in January. What happens then? Like, we lose a key player? That's not a good thing. The second scenario is he's crap the entire time, and we keep playing him, and we keep relying on him, and he makes us worse. Because we're worse with him right now than without him. He's not doing it. He's giving balls away. He's making bad passes. He's not the same. And it's definitely not a skill thing. He's obviously still very talented. I think it's an attitude. I think he can't be bothered. I think he wants to leave. And I think this summer was a horrible, horrible event for him because he put himself out there. He thought everyone was going to come running after him. Nobody came for him. Nobody wanted him. And to me, a player that says, I don't want to be here anymore, I need a new challenge, he's gone. As a manager, if I were a manager, he would never play for the team again. We tried to sell you and it didn't work out. I think he would come off the bench every once in a while. He might play in an EFL Cup, but he would not be a starter for it anymore. And I think for me, The only reason right now he would still play is because Lo Celso is hurt, which is so bad. Um, but if the entire squad was healthy, Eriksen wouldn't play anymore. That would be the end of his Tottenham playing time. You said you didn't want to be here. You said that out loud. You can't just say, "Well, I don't want to be here," but nobody came for you. Well, I guess being here is not so bad. No, 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 no. I think Pochettino has to be. He's got that. I wouldn't call it vicious, but yeah, let's call it vicious. It's not the right word. It's not the word I'm looking for. But Pochettino's got that ruthless. That's the word I was looking for. Pochettino's got that ruthless side of him, where if you fall out of favor with him, you're gone. And I don't think he's doing it with Eriksen, and I think he needs to. Eriksen needs to be on the bench. He doesn't need to play anymore. He needs to set an example. No player is bigger than the team. No player is bigger than any team. No team, maybe Messi, is bigger than the team, but not. There may be a hand like Ronaldo, Messi. Other than that, no player is bigger than the team. When you put a player ahead of the team, you get a Neymar situation at PSG. That's what happens. As a fan of the team, like look, as a fan of the team, you fall in love with players, right? Every Tottenham fan, there's no such thing as a Tottenham supporter that doesn't love Heung-min Son. Everyone loves him. Everyone loves Lucas Moura. Everyone loves Harry Kane. I don't think you have that with Eriksen, right? And even if you did, even if you had that with Eriksen, of course you fall in love with the players and you support them and you're happy and they're awesome and you love them. You buy their shirt with their name on the back. But in the end, do you support the player or do you support the club? I mean, you might support the player also. Like, for example, me. Wherever Chucky Lozano goes, I'm a fan of Chucky Lozano's team. I was a fan of PSV. I'll always be a PSV fan. And now, guess what? I'm a Napoli fan. And that's right. I'm not passionate about Napoli. I'm not passionate about PSV. But I support them. I hope they win the league. Right? I'm cheering for them this year. Napoli's my team in Italy now. That's it. That's how it goes. Sevilla's my team in Spain now, because Hernandez plays there. That's how it goes. Whatever, and Porto's been my team in Portugal because Porto has had some really good Mexican players over the years and has played them and they've given them opportunities, right? So yeah, I'm a Porto supporter in name only. I'm not gonna buy a shirt. I was a Leverkusen fan when Chicharito was there. I'm a Sevilla fan now. I was a PSV fan, and now I'm a Napoli fan. You follow the players that you like, and you support the team that they're on. But the one team, your team, if the players leave, are you not going to support the team anymore? Of course you are, right? So the point is, there comes a point where the players are not, they're a detriment to the team. They have to go, and you still support the team. And the reason they have to go is because it's what's best for the team as a whole. And I think we've reached that point with those players. And I think you might keep. I think Ferguson did this for a long time. Like I mentioned earlier, he kept the core, but some players had to move in and out. All right. I think Harry Kane has to stay. You're not gonna ever find another Harry Kane. Son will stay until whenever. Lucas Moura will stay. But some of the other players, they come and go. Some of the other players come and go. I think you keep a core of veterans that will stay with the team until the bitter end, and you build around them. And the other players, they might be a core player, but if there's a bad attitude with the player, he's got to go, because no player is bigger than the team. And I think we're starting to see a point where Pochettino's relying too much on this one player who's not giving it his all, to the detriment of the team, and he's got to go. I think Pochettino is the long-term manager that Tottenham needs to succeed, but only if the players have the right mindset. All right? And right now, I think you can't blame the skill of the players, and I don't think it's Pochettino's tactics, even though sometimes he gets it wrong, like I mentioned at the beginning. I think it's an attitude problem. I think this horrible, horrible start to the season that we've had has to come down to attitude. you could see it in some of the games we've played this year. The players are just not passionate anymore, and I think that's just the normal progression of a squad. And I think Alex Ferguson was onto something when he came up with this philosophy that you have to get rid of some players sometimes. Because there's no excuse anymore. Like, this was the team. Last year we had injuries. At the end of last year we had all these injuries and players were tired and all this stuff. This year there was none of that. We had no excuses as to why we're performing the way we're performing other than attitude. And maybe losing the Champions League final hurt the players more than we expected them to hurt psychologically and emotionally, and they haven't recovered. But in either event, if that's the case, then even more reason for them to go. Because we can't be dwelling on that for the entire season. There has to be something that happens, some change that happens within the squad, attitude wise, or else this is going to be an absolutely disastrous season, and we can't let that happen. So that's my little rant. Oh yeah, I said I want to do a quick thing on the stupid offside call, because I think there's a general misconception regarding this whole VAR thing. I've been a critic of VAR since VAR was announced that it was going to happen. A lot of people think it's great. It's not great. Okay, it's not good. VAR is not a good system, and it's not a good system. It hasn't been a good system this year so far. You, for example, when Manchester City's game-winning goal, I think it was week 2, when it hit Laporte's arm on the way to Sterling, and then he scored the goal and got called back. That's such a stupid call. And I said this at the time. I wanted to go and be on record saying I disagreed with that call, so people wouldn't think that I'm only in favor of VAR when it benefits Tottenham, but I'm against VAR when it's to our detriment. No, I'm against it across the board. Because the problem with VAR is not that it's getting decisions wrong. It is a lot of times getting decisions wrong. All right, and it's not it's not eliminating wrong decisions like everyone thought it would. All right, so the problem with VAR, it's not that though. It's not that it's getting decisions wrong or that it's not eliminating wrong decisions. It's that it's really rewriting the rules if you think about it. Okay, in this last weekend's game against Leicester City, the purpose of the offside rule is not to prevent Son's left nipple from being offside. That's not what the rule is for. Okay, offside is intended to prevent attackers from gaining an unfair advantage by cherry picking. All right, essentially, the essence, the crux of the offside rule is to prevent cherry picking. When it's that's all it is. It's not and it's not a my armpit was ahead of your toe rule. That's not what VAR. That's not what the offside rule was intended to be when it was created. All right. What's the problem is? It's impossible. It's inherently impossible to measure offside when it's millimeters or even inches. All right. You look at that image of Son offside, and it's the stupidest thing. Who decides where the shoulder started? All right, where his shoulder was, and compared to the defender. The image is super blurry for starters. Second of all, his shirt blended in with the player's shorts, so you can't really get a crystal clear image of that. You can't really, there's the frame rate issue of when the ball was kicked and when you pause the exact moment, right? It's impossible. What I'm saying is it's objectively, literally impossible to tell exactly where Son was when the ball was kicked. And even if you could, like we all, okay, anatomically speaking, we all agree where the shoulder starts, where the shoulder end, where the shoulder ends and the arm begins. That's not an opinion. That's science. All right. This is where it ends. This is where it starts. The shoulder does not. The shoulder is here, and as of this moment, it's the arm, because that's where your bone goes into the socket on your shoulder. Right. Boom. Shoulder versus arm. That's something we can all agree on. Anatomically speaking, there are no questions. What we cannot agree is in that blurry image where Son's shoulder ends and his arm starts, or where his chest was at the time. That is a completely different thing, and it's not subjective, because where I measure it, it might be different where you measure it, because it's a human being making those determinations. Where I think the shoulder is might not be where you think the shoulder is. Where I think the arm begins might not be where you think the arm begins. And you're measuring millimeters, and you're telling me he was offside by millimeters? It's just infuriatingly stupid. It's infuriatingly stupid, and it's creating these absurd results that it was not meant to do. Offside was not meant to determine what VAR is determining right now. Offside was meant so that you don't gain an unfair advantage by being ahead, by cherry picking it, so you don't gain an unfair advantage by blocking the view of the goalkeeper, by preventing him from seeing where the ball is, and then getting out of his way last second and being like, I wasn't involved in the play. Those are the things. It's so that if you make a run for the ball and you draw a defender, and then you're like, I didn't actually touch the ball, you made a play to the ball, you were involved in the play, you're offside. Those are the things that offside was meant to prevent, not to prevent a millimeter inch to sit. It's so dumb. Nobody would have argued if you looked at that image without VAR. If you just saw a still shot, a screenshot of that image, everyone would have said he's onside. Because why? The rule is always, if they're even, he's onside. That was always the rule. Now we're getting down to the minutia of millimeters. Are you out of your mind? This is ruining the sport. It's objectively bad for the game. It's objectively stupid because it's you cannot measure it. It's rewriting the rules. It's not fixing mistakes. It's still getting decisions wrong. There's no benefit to this. All right? I don't think we've had anything right now that I can say, you know what, without VAR, that would have been a horrible decision. There were penalties, for example, the game against Arsenal, where Kane was brought down in the box in the second half at the end of the game. It wasn't even reviewed, or if it was reviewed, the referee is like, nope, it wasn't clear and erroneous, right? It wasn't a clear error of judgment. So even though it was a penalty, he didn't call it as such, and because the bar is set so high, it doesn't even change the result. If you're gonna utilize VAR, that's what it's for. It's to be like, you were wrong, there was contact, he was brought down in the box, this is a penalty. But instead, it's like, well, the referee said there was no penalty, therefore, because the bar has been set so high, it's still going to be a wrong call. So what's the point of VAR? So what in the big decisions, you're getting them wrong, and on the other hand, you're saying, well, that grazed his arm on the way into the goal, therefore it's not a goal. Or literally his nipple was offside, so it's not a goal. Okay, VAR, if that's what VAR is for, it's to get the big decisions wrong, the clear ones wrong, but the tiny ones, the insignificant ones right. What's the point then? VAR is stupid. VAR is ruining the sport. I don't know if maybe in a few years we'll get it right. We'll tweak it again so that it doesn't have these ridiculous results. But for now, it has to be said that VAR sucks. VAR is stupid. Those are the kinds of decisions that I said would ruin the game, ruin the sport, that everyone that was a critic of VAR said would ruin the game and ruin the sport, and it's happening. It's happening now. It's going to continue to happen. And you might be a fan of it now. Wait till that happens to your team. When something so stupid and insignificant and indecipherable costs you a win. And a lot of people are, it's funny though, because a lot of people are for it now, but they're against it later. You'll see. I've been against it from the start. Even if it benefits us, like it did in that City game, I criticize that call. I will continue to do so because I think VAR is bad. It's a bad idea. It's a bad system. Maybe it's a good idea in theory, but it's not executed properly, and it's stupid. So that's my end. That's the end of that rant. That's all I'm going to say about VAR. It's a ridiculous that was called offside. Just unbelievable. But anyway, that's my theory on that, and that's my theory on the players right now. I think there needs to be an attitude change, or this summer coming up, maybe even in January, there needs to be some overhauling because something has to happen. Because we're really bad right now. We are a really bad team, and it's just frustrating. Anyway, that is all I have to say. That's it. So thanks for listening, and until next time.